Hi, and welcome to another episode of Spotlight On. I'm Brendan Lowe with the Division of Communications of the Camden City School District. Today, we're joined by another alumnus of the Camden City School District, Guy Still, who graduated from Woodrow Wilson High School. We're going to talk with Guy today about his path in Camden schools through college and what he's doing today. Thanks very much for joining us, Guy.
Thank you.
So can you start just by telling us a little bit more about your educational experience in Camden? You grew up and went to Camden schools throughout. Where did you start? Where did you graduate from?
Well, I started at Sumner School, Centerville. My aunt was a teacher's aide for probably 30, 40 years. Wow. So education and Camden education was something that was like instilled in me from birth. But started there until around second grade. I got into the CHIPS program, so I made it here to Forest Hill. Forest Hill, it was, it was great. Everything about my education in Camden when I was young just, made me such a better person, just because it was, it just gave me a vision of what my aunt always talked to me about, because, when we're real visual, so everybody's like, show me what you're talking about. And my aunt was older, so went to Forest Hill and met one of her teacher friends there, and then the path just kept going with people in your ear. And so from Forest Hill, I went to East Camden Middle, and that was I think the biggest change was when I moved. I moved to a different part of the city, being East Camden, and went to East Camden Middle. From there, graduated and went to Woodrow Wilson High School. Obviously, high school being a whole nother animal. Woodrow Wilson, I started playing football. As a freshman, I played football, basketball, and ran track. And so I was a student athlete, and education came fairly easy to me. Athletics I needed to work at, and so I think that was a whole nother situation for me to deal with. Scholar athlete, and then you want to go to the next level, and you want to go to college, and you want to be this big time college athlete. That's what the dream was at that point. I mean, education still being in the forefront, in front of athletics, because just those voices around me since I was growing up. And after I graduated from Woodrow Wilson, wanted to I told a friend of mine who was there playing football at the time. Obviously, Rutgers was Division I, and I told him, look, I don't want to go to any games, anything like that, because it's going to make me want to walk onto the team. Eventually, yes, that happened. Walked onto the team. My freshman year, played at Rutgers. Spring ball went well. I was like third string come the season. Long story short, education again playing to the forefront. Opportunity got less and less athletically, and then more and more educationally, because I mean, it was just being a scholar athlete in high school is different than being a scholar athlete in college, just much tougher. Right. So for me, it was more having to decide what did I want to do really, and finding a direction. So I said, well, if I don't play sports for my future, I wanted to be around it. So my plan was sports broadcasting. Okay. I said, well, I'll be in the locker rooms or something. Well, that all changed one day. I got an internship. My first internship was with CBS Sports, in Manhattan. It was more finding file tape and things for producers and things. Well, from there, I got they asked me, my school said, well, we have an internship available with CBS Sports again, or we have a internship with BET Nightly News. And me thinking, I guess forward thinking, I'm real good at that. So forward thinking, I said, well, when I graduate from school, I'll have sports under my belt. I don't want to just have sports under my belt. I'll have sports and news if I join BET Nightly News. Well, and when I got to BET Nightly News, they said, well, we don't do sports here much. But you can hang out with her, and the young lady's name was Sharon Carpenter. She was a producer. She was the entertainment producer. Okay. And my first day on the job, I was with her interviewing like celebrities, Cameron, Joel Santana, you know, rappers and
Yeah.
different things like that. But long story short, that's when everything kind of shifted and changed from a sports aspect to entertainment. Once I saw the lights, it was just like, after that, it was just, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so from there, developed these relationships and developed these interests that, you know, again, just forward thinking helped me develop a whole lot faster than a lot of 19, 20-year-olds,
Right.
21-year-olds were. And so again, just being there and doing features, doing interviews, you know, just different types of things just to get as much experience as I could, really worked out in my favor. When BT Nightly News downsized to basically compete with MTV, and it was like MTV was doing news snippets every 10 minutes to the hour.
Right.
And so BT Nightly News downsized, less people working, doing news snippets instead of one long show. Jackie Reed worked alongside her. It was great. But when they downsized, there was a guy, his name was Court Passant, and he saw the experience that I had, and he got a word from one of the executive producers from BT. He was with CBS Nightly News.
Okay.
And so he immediately picked me up. As soon as I left there, he immediately picked me up.
Okay.
And again, started out from the bottom, filed tape for producers, and then they gave me a couple opportunities for red carpets, and red carpets turned into movie junkets. And again, relationship building has always been my thing, but I think just being as though having those people in my ear in the very, very beginning,
Yeah.
and having that education background in my life from very early,
Yeah.
helped me to, you know, just my mind definitely wasn't in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade when I was there. It was like, okay, where am I going next?
Right.
So I think that's how it really helped me.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long, you know, journey. So from there, what I did, my family is very close.
Okay.
But my parents aren't very close. So my family separately are very close. But
Sure.
I've always wanted this tight family. So my daughter was born 8 years ago, and I had to make a decision whether I was going to slow down, and I was living a real fast life where we were, you know, I mean, you're at parties, you're at doing different things with different people, you're traveling, you're Warner Wolf, a famous news reporter, news sports anchor for CBS News in New York. He sat me down one day and he said, Guy, if you're going to be in this business, you try very hard not to start a family early, because it's very difficult to raise a family
Right.
while
Balance
you're
both.
doing this.
Right.
Balance both, exactly.
Right.
And again, just being able to sit with those, you know, educated people and those educated minds, he made me think about that. And I was thinking about that, and I'm 22 years old, and I'm like, well, I don't have any plans on starting a family. Well, long story short, my daughter was born, and I wanted to be the father that I really never had. Okay, so decided to come home here, Camden, started substitute teaching, got a pre-K to third grade certification. When I got here, because my ultimate goal was to start teaching in the area.
Okay.
My wife is an art teacher in the area.
Okay.
She's from Camden too, and she's been an art teacher in the area, I want to say, for 11 years.
Wow.
And so my daughter was being born, and I came home and really, you know, solidified my position as, you know, trying to be a family man. And so the jobs, you know, were scarce.
Sure.
There were a lot of firings going on.
Right.
So
This is right after 2008.
yes,
The economy's not doing so well.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So Boys and Girls Club became available. Boys
Okay.
and Girls Club job became available. Youth Development Director. They trained me at the position. I've spent 5 years there, and you know, I think there is an advantage to being able to raise kids, and I think that's what the opportunity that the Boys and Girls Club has given me. It's given me an opportunity to actually raise raise children, and ultimately do. Like, my life pretty much has come full circle to do exactly what, you know, I've always wanted to do, because deep down inside, even doing television, I'm like, you know, what happens when I start a family, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that was my journey in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of details in between that I missed, but yeah.
We can thank you for taking us on your story here.
Mm-hmm.
We can dive into some of those details and some of the, you know, the critical
Mm-hmm.
decisions that you made along the way.
Yes, absolutely.
You talked, and I've heard from others too, about the CHIPS program and how that was kind of a foundational experience for you. What about CHIPS itself? Was it what you were learning? Was it the teachers who you were learning from? Was it the environment? What about it, you know, helped establish the foundation that you then, you know, took with you to high school, to college, and then?
Yeah, I think the CHIPS program really just making you work a little harder. Not saying any other teachers didn't, but I think a program built to push you a little harder makes you stronger. Like, in the end, or not in the end, but say college, or when you're like, you know, I don't know if I could take this anymore, you know, this is too much, you know. And I was at that place in college when, you know, you're thinking back on how much you were pushed back home.
Right.
You know what I mean? How much people thought of you, to the point where, you know, they are spending extra hours with you after school to make sure that you know exactly what they're teaching, or know even a little more.
Right.
You know, I can speak, you know, we can talk CHIPS program, but I can also talk, I just saw a teacher the other day, and she played such a significant role in my life, period, because I still remember she spent hours with me after school to do an essay for the University of Notre Dame application, college application, and I got in to the University of Notre Dame.
Oh, congratulations.
That was like, she spent hours with me after school to help me refine this essay, because it's for the application. And you know, those different aspects of whether it's the teacher or whether it's what they're teaching, it's how you're taking it in, it's what you're dealing with at home, and if you're able to fight through all those things in order to just take in all of that stuff. I mean, the teachers were great to me, and the subject matter was great to me. I do remember the CHIPS program in Forest Hill being more, there were more, I guess, plays or more performing arts opportunities that, you know, gave me that look into, like, the limelight type, the attention, I guess, from other kids. Because at that level, you're like, the attention from other kids, if you have the lead role in, like, the Dare play. I do remember it was a Dare play.
That means a lot.
So yeah, those the CHIPS program definitely played that bigger part on me.
Sure.
And it's funny because I started substitute teaching, and a substitute teach at Forest Hill.
Okay.
I remember my teachers, but I remember this one teacher, and her name was Miss Maynard, okay? And so I'm talking to these teachers in the teacher's lounge, or maybe even the office. No, it's the principal, right? Mr. Medley at the time.
Okay.
And he goes, "Oh, you were taught by Miss Maynard, huh? Come here, let me take you somewhere." And he takes me to her class, and I'm like, I'm like 28, I'm like 30 years old at this point. I'm like, what? You're gonna take me to her class?
Right.
So for her to still be there, and you talk about significance, you talk about the role they play in your life, she brought back so many memories. And obviously, you know, she was like, "You were a great student. This was one of my favorite students." She was showing me off through the hallways. I'm like 30 years old. You know what I mean? So I'm feeling like a kid again.
Right.
But I think it's home because the teachers and the environment made me feel like family. You know what I mean? So that's what was big to me.
And let's talk a little bit about transitioning to college. In Camden and elsewhere, a lot of kids apply to and get into college, and a lot of them start, and then you know, it's almost like hitting a wall where you talked about some of the academic challenges in college. It's hard.
Yes.
And so can you talk, I mean, you mentioned the athletic piece, you mentioned the academic piece, but there's also like a perseverance piece that I think you referenced before. Can you take us through a little bit, both how you ended up at Rutgers as opposed to Notre Dame or somewhere else, and then how it was, you know, making the adjustment from the experience, from Woodrow Wilson over to college?
Okay. Okay. So I got accepted so many different places. I actually, again, forward thinking. I took my SATs my freshman year.
Okay.
Nobody, when people were like, "What? You're taking SATs?
Right.
You don't even."
It's a little early.
It's a little early.
Yeah.
So what I thought was, how about I take them? I used to get a kick out of that, a drive out of that. Like I took them my freshman year, then I took them again my sophomore year, and then my junior year, then my senior year. And so when I found out, oh, you know, they take the highest score between both, I was like, well, they just want, you just got to pay for them, and they take your highest score. And finding out I got like a higher score than some seniors when I was a freshman, you know, I got kicked, just driven. You know, it was just isolated moments that drove me that next way. And so took my SATs all 4 years, had to decide on a college, and I got into Temple, got into Syracuse, which is a fantastic broadcast journalism school. You know, got into where at University of Miami, Notre Dame, so forth and so on, and chose Rutgers because it really came down to scholarship money, being in state, and really just going through a lot in my life at that time, and talking perseverance, going through a lot in my life at that time, family-wise. Excuse me. It would have been tough to stay at Rutgers in Camden, just tough to stay in the area, period. And so I said, well, Rutgers, New Brunswick is not far from home, and it's not too close. Let me just, and it's in state. And I said, well, let me just go there, and I didn't look back. You know, I didn't look back. Now, I always remember my home, where I came from, let everyone know, you know, because at the time it was just like people felt like no good could come from here. And I made it totally obvious that anything and everything is possible to come out of this city. Like people will tell you, you know, students that were there, faculty, they still know where I'm from, because this is where I said I was from, and this is where I let them know, you know, all good can come out of Camden.
What, can I just ask real quick, what kind of reaction did you get when you're talking to other people from different parts of the state and you're telling them that you're from Camden?
Not different parts of the state. I'll tell you, my freshman year dorm, there was a guy from Texas, or even close to Vegas, and he said something to me. He said, man, Camden, because he's in Jersey, so he knows. He said, Camden, yeah, I heard about y'all, Camden, right? That right there was just enough for me to like just explode. Not on him, just like go crazy. Like, I can't believe people from the other coast, you know how tough it is here. And the reaction I got was fairly similar from everybody. Even from Jersey, you get North Jersey that says, I mean, look, there's a lot of young kids that are in college, and everybody wants to be the alpha, everybody wants to be the tough guy, and they're from the toughest city and all that other stuff. And I'm a very humble young man. I'm a very, I mean, I love where I come from. I bleed where I come from, but at the same time, I tell them, you know, I'm not that tough guy. I'm from a tough city, and you know, there's a positive light that comes out of that city, and that is me. And so you get a tough response, like, yeah, Camden is like this, and then you might get some people from Newark or Trenton, like, yeah, well, y'all, you know, your hood is tough, but mine's is tougher type of reaction. Right. So I think the transition for me, it wasn't academic, because I had pushed myself academically here and there, and I truly feel like if I was to talk on preparation, my city schools that I went to pushed me, and my city schools prepared me for that particular experience. But I think the preparation was more of a like a it was more racial, or more, you know, I'm a black and Puerto Rican young man, and I hadn't seen a lot of, you know, Caucasian people, and didn't know, you know, how to adjust. You know, you're living with them, you're in dormitories with them, and it's not so much just Caucasians. You have Asian, and you have that. You have a melting pot here, but when you go there, it's just the pot is so much larger. It's overflowing.
Right.
And I think that not just racially, but just the pot overflowing, and you're building relationships with all of these different people from all of these different places and different characters and different personalities. And, you know, I think my thing was I was always me, but at the same time, you have to deal with everybody differently.
Sure.
And so I think the adjustment with dealing with everybody differently than how I dealt with them at home in this box, because this is in fact a small place.
Right.
I think that was the biggest adjustment for me. Athletics, of course, but I think that was a bigger part of just saying this is where I want to stay, not this is where I want to be, because again, like you say, you have that wall. Well, when I was coming up in high school, you had a lot of guys who were great in athletics, great academically, and going to college and coming back. So they would go to USC, and they would go to these Indiana and these different places, and then you would see them, you know, back home. I mean, not back home, not at school, but like at a Rowan, at an in-state, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that played on my mind too.
Yeah, understandably.
So, yeah.
We talked a lot about lessons and values and some serious stuff. If we can talk a little bit about what you're doing with BET and CBS.
Yes.
And just some of the experiences that you had. You talked about having to run and get tape and some of the maybe more tedious or boring parts of a job in broadcast. But for a lot of people who might be watching, students who might be interested in you know, a job in the entertainment industry or in broadcast journalism, can you talk about some of the more fun or entertaining experiences you had? Just a few highlights to get a sense of what's out there.
Yeah, I think I can name a bunch of celebrities, but I think my standout moment had to be an interview with Terrence Howard. It was a movie junket when Hustle and Flow had come out. The movie had come out. The musician side of it, any musician who had been in movies, that was probably who I was interviewing at the time, which would be Ice Cube. I did Ludacris. I did an interview with Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson was big. But I think for me, Terrence Howard was big because it was more in-depth. It was more, I think I made it a little personal. And I think in that career, you try to separate yourself from the people that you interview. And I said to him, I said, from where you've come from to where you're at, tell me about it. He tells me, he goes, I believe from desperation comes inspiration. You know, when you're in that foxhole and your, I think he said your need or your, I think your push, it was a word, a term he used. He said it becomes larger than your fear. And so it just rung out. You know what I mean? It rung out to me. And so that was an experience that I had. I had done some interviews with like people who were at 106 in Park, and they would just come to us. And just being on the set, being behind stage, having that access, those are all parts of things that I really enjoyed. Bringing people that I knew to different shows and different things, and you know, different gatherings and parties and stuff that we would be at. Those are the more glamorous experiences.
So to change tune significantly and come back home, back to Camden.
Right.
And we only have a few minutes left, but I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing at Boys and Girls.
Yes.
Because talking and hearing about your experiences through school, you talked a lot about how there were these people, there were these voices in your head who were shaping and influencing what you did. It sounds like you are now the voice for some kids, your own daughter, but then also the students who you work with. So can you just kind of bring it together by talking a little bit about what you do now at Boys and Girls, and how you work with the youth who you once were?
Absolutely. Well, like I said earlier, I think my life has come full circle in that way. I think that the kids that I serve are ages 6 to 18. So you have everything from a child that you are shaping their mind to think on that, to push themselves and think a little more on the educational side when they don't want to do their homework. And then you have the kids who you see them as who you once were. And those teens play a huge role in what I do, because I am constantly feel like I'm raising myself. You know what I mean? I don't want them to hit the same roadblocks that I hit. There are a lot of situations and things that aren't under their control that could derail them. And so, okay, so when I was graduating from high school, there was no Boys and Girls Club across the street. It was an abandoned tennis court in Dudley Grange, and you really couldn't even go through that park at night. When I was in school, a couple years into college, I had heard they built something like that, and I was, you know, I was curious about it, but I never really went to go see. And so now, seeing what the Boys and Girls Club has become has been something of a, again, a home, a family, is something that I've, again, always wanted. It's not just my daughter, but it started with my daughter, and it's grown into this big family that I have at the Boys and Girls Club of bunches and bunches of children, obviously 200 a day I see. And I feel like I'm essentially raising myself. These teens, you know, I love them to death like they're my own kids. So, I mean, all of them, I love them to death like they're my own kids. But I think just having that connection with the teens a little more
helps you have an impact.
So, yes.
Thank you. We are running out of time for this episode, but we want to thank you for coming on, for sharing your story. There are a lot of students who are watching and who are trying to figure out their own path, and so it can be very inspirational to hear yours.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and thank you for watching this episode of Spotlight On with Guys Still. If you have a suggestion for a future guest, please email us at communications@camden.k12.nj.us. Thanks again.